Welcome to the Clear to Send podcast, a podcast about wireless engineering, where we educate you on Wi-Fi technology, talk about design tips, troubleshooting, interviews, and the tools. Here are your hosts, Roel and Francois.
Hey everybody, welcome to a brand new episode of the Clear to Send podcast. I am your co-host, Roel Dionisio, alongside with Francois Vergès. How are you doing, Francois?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's getting warm over here.
Yeah. It's been warm here, very warm for like a week or so. So it's and we finally had a thunderstorm the other night. So people were
all your snow is gone, right?
Yeah. No, actually, it's I was still online, so everything went okay, I guess.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, over here, as many people know, I record in my garage, so I got a new fan that was better with pushing air. It's going off right now, and I'm starting to sweat already with this light. And the sun's coming up earlier, so it's good. We're keeping ourselves busy, right? So, and in this episode, we're going to talk about WPA3, an introduction to it. If you guys don't know that WPA3 is out.
Yeah, it's been for a little while actually.
It has, yeah, and I haven't seen it yet in the wild, except for here in my lab. How about you?
No, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it in production yet, so I guess it's slow adoption.
It is, yeah, and I put out a feeler out there on Twitter asking how many people are using it in production, testing it, or not even using it at all, and it is a very slow adoption. So this episode's going to be just kind of an overview of it. But before we get to that episode, if you guys haven't heard, we actually released our very first course for Clear to Send, right? So I'll share my screen here so you guys can have a look at it. And Francois, we wanted to talk about a practical guide to Wi-Fi site surveys. So that's our very first course that we have here for people. And it really is the first course that we're doing. We plan to do more. But if you head to courses.cleartosend.net, and I'm sharing my screen, if you're listening to this on audio, we'll have a video format of this as well on our YouTube channel. But you can see here courses.cleartosend.net. You scroll down, there is our single course there. Excuse me. And as you click on it, you can go through and see what this course is about. We have Lariana, who's already taken the full course, give us her review. This really just talks about how to perform successful Wi-Fi site surveys where you apply the theory and the practical together, right? So we put things together, and here's photos of us in the wild doing Wi-Fi site surveys. We look like doctors. But it's just lab coats, right, doing surveys.
Yeah. So we try to pack our experience and different things that we use in the field, the practical tips, put everything together in this course. And we actually have like a preview. So one of the lessons you can actually preview it. If you go on the page that advertises the course, and you'll be able to watch just like as if you were enrolled in the course, to give you an idea of what you get with the course.
Yeah, so we've got a few modules here. You can see the different modules included, up to 5 modules, a little over 5 hours in length, but also including some bonus videos and other bonus material as well. So down here, we list all the bonuses for you that we include, including scripts that Francois has created, some template reports that you could use with Ekahau, and you can adjust those as you want. But we go through that, the process that we use for site surveys, how you can be more efficient, more productive in those site surveys, and not have to be, just less frazzled when you do a site survey, right?
Yeah. And that information you'll be able to apply right away. So that's what we try to keep in mind building the courses. How can we provide practical information that people can start using right away as soon as they work on the next site survey. So if you do a lot of site surveys, it could be very beneficial, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yes, for sure. So again, that's courses.cleartosend.net. And why don't we dive into WPA3?
Yes.
It's an interesting topic. I wanted to look at it because I think security is just not as it's not as important, right? People don't treat it seriously especially when it comes to Wi-Fi. They just want Wi-Fi to work, but a lot of times their security is maybe not up to par. And a lot of times we see open SSIDs and very simple pre-shared key implementations of WPA2. And so WPA3 is aimed to give you improved security over WPA2. And WPA2 is probably the most widely used security method everywhere, right?
Exactly. WPA2 is widely used right now. The thing is, it's kind of old though. Like if you look at how security evolved over Wi-Fi, so we started with having like nothing, and then we had the web, and then we had WPA, which was the response for web being compromised, and so we were using TKIP with WPA, and then WPA2 came around with the stronger encryption types with AES. And then nothing happened for like over 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years is a long time for anything new in security for Wi-Fi.
So I think WPA2 is dated from 2008, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like 12 years ago now. And so now we have WPA3, which is aimed to improve the security we have on Wi-Fi networks, introduce a couple of new security features, enforce some of the security mechanisms we had available, but no one was really enforcing, and also provide better encryption, I guess, or better protect us against some of the attacks that have been released on WPA2.
Yeah, so WPA3 improves upon or tries to block some of those security vulnerabilities that we've had with WPA2. If you guys don't remember the crack attack, that one was highly publicized, and it was pushed very hard out there through the media, right? As if that was it for Wi-Fi, like everyone's hacked. So we did an episode on that a long time ago. That was cleartosend.net/94, where we talk about the crack attack.
It's a long time ago. 94.
94. Yeah, we're on what, 229 now? So we've made it pretty far out there. So that's when we last talked about crack attack. And then we also had an episode with Hendrik Luth, episode number 175, and he talks through with some Wi-Fi security updates as well. And that was still, I think, early on when WPA3 was first announced. And it's been a while since anyone's talked about WPA3. WPA3 does also protect or fix against the dictionary attacks that WPA2, the pre-shared key, was vulnerable against, right? So somebody could take frames and start doing dictionary attacks on trying to discover what your pre-shared key was.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that I guess at the beginning of WPA2 we didn't have this issue, but now that we have access to more computing power, especially in the cloud, people could do offline dictionary attacks, like you said. They could just capture the proper packets and then go in the cloud, rent a lot of computing power, and then run dictionary attacks against those packets really fast, which started to create vulnerabilities in Wi-Fi network that use weak passwords. If you had a weak password, not a lot of characters, easy to guess, then you could pretty much find the password for the network and then use it to connect to the Wi-Fi. So that's why WPA2 PSK can still be secured as long as you use a long password and you increase the entropy of the password.
Yeah, which is never done, to be honest. Everyone pastes their passwords on sheets. They print out those sheets, for everyone to see. Here's the password to the Wi-Fi network, and it's like, why do you even do that? just make it open SSID at that point. Well, they become encrypted, but like everyone knows the key now, right? It's a shared key that everyone can see.
Yeah, so that's a couple of issues we have with WPA2, and also we also in the field we still have sometimes some very old devices that don't support WPA2.
Yeah,
and that's another issue. But in some cases you have to support WPA or TKeep to make sure that this device can still connect to Wi-Fi.
We're still gonna have those issues of support of WPA3. There's not a lot of devices that support WPA3 yet, but we're getting there because WPA3 increases the crypto strength. It will dump those legacy protocols. You're not going to use TKIP with WPA3, and they do have a mandatory support for protected management frames. That wasn't a mandatory feature, although it was in the standard, right? The 802.11 standard, to be able to use protected management frames. No one really used it. And I remember I was using I was at a project, and in San Francisco, this office was always vulnerable to attacks, DAuth attacks primarily. So there was people out there doing DAuth attacks, and they wanted to enable protected management frames. So this was a couple years ago. They enabled it, and they saw a big drop in performance, and it just wasn't workable for them. And I think that was like really early on when devices were starting to support protected management frames.
Even though it's pretty old technology, if you go back to the standard, that's been there for a long time. Yeah. But just no one has really implemented it or taken it seriously. Because of exactly. I guess it's more time to implement as well. But because of all the work that had been done behind the scenes and showing some of the vulnerabilities of the protocol, it became an important piece of Wi-Fi security. And maybe one day we can do like a deep dive protocol on PMF and explain exactly what it is. But what's nice is they made a requirement for WPA3, and WPA3 is a requirement for Wi-Fi 6. So as the more Wi-Fi 6 we start to see coming out, in the market, the more devices will start to see that supports WPA3 and support PMF.
Yep. So we will see more support, and then I just wanted to look it up. We did have an episode on protected management frame, episode number 158. Might be worth re-looking at this since we now have Wi-Fi 6 and WPA3, doing a little bit more of a deep dive again on protected management frame and how it works today with the current protocols that we have in front of us, right?
We did so many episodes.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember a lot of the episodes that we record.
You have to search. You have to
go search for it. Like, that's why I added the search functionality to our website, is so I can look back.
Yeah.
All right, so WPA3, if you want to learn more, there is a specification document from the Wi-Fi Alliance. So WPA3 comes from Wi-Fi Alliance. They certify devices for WPA3, and you could go and find which devices support or are certified for WPA3. You can do that through their product finder. And in this episode, we are using my lab environment where I have a Cisco 3504 controller using 802 access point. And I've had my iPhone, which is an iPhone XR, and I also have a Samsung S10 to test against an SSID, which I configure for WPA3. And so before we go into that lab, we still have to define, what is WPA3? What are the components of WPA3? Because in the previous version of Wi-Fi Secure WPA2, you remember you had pre-shared key, which you set up that personal mode, and then you had enterprise mode, right? Those were the only two options. Pretty simple to set up, put a password or use 802.1x, right, Francois? And Now it's a little bit more complex than that.
Yeah, exactly. We still have the two big families, I guess, of personal and enterprise. So personal using a password to authenticate the network. Enterprise using Edge 2.1x or Radius server to authenticate the Wi-Fi. So we still have those two big families, I guess, but we have a little bit more options with WPA3. One thing that I think is important to note, and that's a little confusing when you start to look at the new security enhancement of Wi-Fi. OWE is not part of WPA3 certification. OWE will be part of a different certification from the Wi-Fi Alliance that's called Enhanced Open. So if you search for Enhanced Open on the Wi-Fi Alliance website, you'll see the specification for OWE, which is pretty much encryption on open networks. And it's not part of the WPA3. Okay, here in this episode, we're only focusing on WPA3. So we'll only focus on the enhancement of WPA3 personal and WPA3 enterprise. We might have an episode on OWE already. I don't know. Maybe.
We might have. I know I've written about it. I don't know if we did an episode, but if we haven't, I think we do. Yeah. I'm doing a search right now. Well, we had one at Aruba Networks at Mobility Field Day 3. I think we just talked about it, but we didn't use our own lab. I mean, so we could do our own on that as well. But with WPA, in regards to WPA3, it's more, in this episode, it's more of an introduction to the features, kind of identifying it. In a future episode, we'll dive into the newest part of the WPA3, right, which is SAE, simultaneous authentication of equals. I think that's what it means.
Yeah, that's what it means.
Too many acronyms to remember, right? In security, we can just dump a lot of acronyms in this episode, right? WPA3 with SAE, there's a specific AKM that you need to look at.
And the AP and the STA says the MFVC and the MFVR right? That's actually one the WPA3 to be mandatory.
Yep. So we're gonna go into SAE in a future episode because I think that needs its own episode. It's not necessarily something we have to understand at a deep level as a Wi-Fi operator because there's a lot of math involved, a lot of formulas involved. But I think it would, if we could try to make it more simpler for people to understand and how that is different from WPA2, that would help us understand, all right, this is why WPA3 is better when it comes to security because it utilizes something I think called Dragonfly. There's all these specifications on it, right? There's documents.
Curves. Yeah, it's like more complex cryptography techniques.
Yeah, so I have to brush up on my math skills, which, back in school, you're like, oh, I'm never going to use those math skills anywhere in life. And then you come to Wi-Fi and you're like, oh, man.
Yeah. I remember back in university we had a crypto course, and at the beginning of the course, at the beginning of the year, everyone was super excited, like, oh, nice, we can learn about how everything works. And after the first class, you're like, what the heck? And then everyone went like, no one followed the course really. Everyone had like bad marks because it was so hard, like only math and stuff, and all over the place. So it can get very complex very fast.
It does, yeah. And when you look at security, that's where a lot of these formulas and math is used. And you have this appreciation for how they come up with this. And in WPA3, the thing you need to know is that there's multiple modes, right? And what we were referring to in WPA2, there's only two modes, personal and enterprise. But in WPA3, you've got WPA3 Personal, WPA3 Enterprise, WPA3 Enterprise 192-bit, WPA3 Fast BSS Transition, which was added later, WPA3 Enterprise Server Certificate Validation. So that's already 5. But then in between, you've got transition modes. So in WPA3 Personal, there's a transition mode. And in Enterprise, there's also a transition mode. And I think as a Wi-Fi professional, you should be able to identify which modes are actually being used in a Wi-Fi network and what do those modes actually mean. And so that's what we'll try to dive into in this episode, is identifying these different modes. How do you look for them? What tools can you use to identify it? And what does it look like configuring it? So that's why I have my lab environment only using the Cisco controller. I think that is the only vendor I have in my lab that supports WPA3, but I have to look at some of the other equipment. The Mist equipment doesn't support it yet. It's actually in somebody listed it as a feature they wanted implemented, but it's really down low on the list, right? There wasn't a lot of people voting for WPA3. So that shows you how important WPA3 is to people.
Yeah. I know Aruba supports it because they were
that's right. Yeah.
actually the first one to work on it. That had people from Aruba working on the WPA3 certification specification. So.
Because they did present at Mobility Field Day 3, right? So I think they're on Mobility Field Day 5 now, which is happening at the end of this month. But that's a good point, because I was gonna test. I have an Aruba AP. I was gonna test it, but I found out that my license had already expired. So it's attached to Aruba Central.
I do have a Aruba controller at home and an AP, so I could try it. Maybe we could follow up and show a couple of screenshots on how you can configure it on Aruba versus Cisco.
All right.
So you want to start with the WPA3 personal modes?
Yeah. I think one thing to tell people is we're going to start throwing out a lot of words. So this is where maybe the video will be more useful. And also, if you go to the show notes, we will have, and I want to make sure we're in the right episode. If you go head over to your show notes for this episode, we will include a table that includes a breakdown of the different modes and the features, so that way you can see what exactly we're talking about, right? Because there's so many modes, there's so many features. Yeah, this is episode number 229. So if you head over to cleartosend.net/229, we'll have a table that will outline what's called the AKM selector table. And if you've gone through the CWMP certifications, you've probably seen the same kind of table, probably in CWSP in security, but it was a much shorter list, right? Now the list is extended. I would imagine they're going to include all this in the new CWSP. So WPA3 personal, the one thing to look at here is when you enable WPA3 personal, you are enabling SAE authentication. And so that has its own AKM suite, the authentication key management list. And when we talk about these modes, that is not a transition mode. You have to support protected management frames. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's the key thing that's similar to each of these modes that is not transition mode. And so
exactly. Yeah.
Go ahead, Francois.
I was going to say, so what would happen in the real world is, and Roland will show it to you. So we're talking about one specific SSID and the way you would configure security on one specific SSID. So let's say here at my house I have my home SSID, and I decide to enable WPA3 personal for that SSID, then it means that any device that wants to connect to that SSID needs to support WPA3 personal. So they need to support SAE, like Roel was mentioning. And when that AP will broadcast that SSID, so like when my home AP will broadcast my home SSID, in the beacon frame, it will broadcast the fact that it supports WPA3 personal, so it will support only the AKM value that corresponds to SAE authentication. So now any phones that sees the beacon, they see that if I want to be able to connect to that SSID, I also need to support SAE. So that's nice if you want to make sure and guarantee that all the devices connecting on your Wi-Fi network support WPA3 personal.
Yep. So that's something to keep mind of with all of these WPA3 modes except the transition mode. And so what I wanted to do is show an example of this. So I have my controller here, right? 3504, I'm running 8.10.121. And so if I go to my WLANs, I have one WLAN, I just called it Secure Me. Go over to the security tab. You can see that the layer 2 security I have set to WPA2 and WPA3. It does support enhanced open as well, but we're going to stick to WPA3. And so you have then the parameters that you want to enable here. I am enabling WPA3, and I'm enabling the higher encryption ciphers that's supported. The one thing to know, is security type personal, right? So we'll go with personal for now. So here you type in your pre-shared key. I'll put in like a really complicated one. And then
I love your send 1, 2, 3.
So we'll hit apply. And what I want to show you is using a tool like Adrian Granados' Wi-Fi Explorer. If you haven't yet, I highly suggest you get this application if you're on a Mac. And if you haven't done that yet, get a Mac.
And by the way, I think Adrian started his new company, and he set up a website for his company this week.
He did. And let me change the way I am showing my screen. I want to share my entire screen. There you go. So if we look at Wi-Fi Explorer, which I have open here, I'm doing a scan and I'm filtering it on this SSID Secure Me. All right, so I'll do an active scan here. You can see already the network details at the top. Network name, BSSID. You can see security is WPA3 SAE, right? So I'm using a version of code on the controller that has WPA3 supported. And to understand like what type of WPA3 this is, you actually have to dive into the frame. And luckily, we have this advanced details view that basically gives you a look into the frame, right? This would be the same as if you were doing a frame capture and you looked at it through Wireshark. So Adrian just brings a lot of these details to you a lot easier, so you don't have to have Wireshark and you don't have to do any kind of sniffing. So the most important thing with WPA3 is you got to look at the RSN information element. And you could see the group ciphers, pairwise ciphers, right? And here the AKM suite, that is the most important piece. And when you go through RSN information element, expand that and expand the auth key management suite list. And you could see there's only one right now. And I'll go into this in a bit, but that's because all I have selected on my controller is WPA3. So there's only one suite that we're looking at. So if we look at that suite, here is the auth key management suite OUI 000FAC. Right, that's something you should remember for the CWMP certification for the exams. But the one number that you really want to look at, in addition to that, is the suite type. And so Adrian makes it easy for you. He says, this is SAE, SHA-256. This number 8 here is the suite type. That's the number that identifies is tied to SAE WPA3 personal. And then you can expand the RSN capabilities, and you'll be able to see right here that management frame protection is required, yes, and management frame protection capable, yes. So when a device sees this, it needs to be able to, one, be capable of protected management frames. This is what Cisco calls, they just switch over the letters, right? The device has to support protected management frames. And then if it's required, it has to use it, right? It has to be used on this network. So if we go back to my controller, you could see that it's personal and have that selected. So that's how we can tell that it is a WPA3 personal. And we can do the same if I pulled up a packet capture. I don't know. Do you think I should do that, Francois?
Why not?
Okay, let's say you don't have.
Also, I think on Windows, I think you can use a WinFi and get access to those information elements as well.
Yeah, I think that if you have Windows, download WinFi, you should be able to see the same exact information elements. And maybe I'll do a video of that with my Windows computer as well. But so here's a packet capture or frame capture. If you don't have Wi-Fi Explorer, use Wireshark, and then capture on the channel. And so this top part right here, actually, do I have a beacon frame that shows this? I don't. I filtered this list. But you could see this probe request from my device. This is my device I was using a Samsung S10, right? Mm-hmm. So you could see that the Samsung S10 is trying to probe for something, and we get a response from my AP. So you can see it's a probe response right here. And if we scroll down, here are the tagged parameters for this beacon frame. And it's a beacon frame because it says so. Losing where I'm at. Oh, probe response frame, not beacon frame, but you can see it's a probe response frame. And then expand the tagged parameters, and just like how you saw with Wi-Fi Explorer, we have the RSN information element. If you expand that, then you'll be able to see the auth key management suite count. There's only one. If we expand that, it already says SAE, so that's what is supported there. We look at the RSN capabilities again, and we can see management frame protection required is set to true and capable set to true. So that's how you look at that. And you could see, because it is WPA3 personal, that there's no mobility information element. So we don't have fast BSS transition. So I want to note, and maybe this is something somebody else can answer, is even though the WPA3 specification allows for fast BSS transition, I cannot enable it on this Cisco controller for WPA3 personal. It's grayed out. So no matter how many times I click that, it's not going to change. And I don't know if this is because of the version of code I'm using. I did look at it at the time when I installed this version of code. I couldn't figure out why this was not enabled for WPA3 personal. But I will say if I go to enterprise, hey, look at that. I can now enable it for WPA3 enterprise, which is kind of weird, right? So I don't know. It's kind of probably just a Cisco feature of this. But what do you think so far, Francois, of WPA3 personal?
That's really nice. I like how it's very easy to find out if your network supports it or advertise it. As soon as you configure it, like you can go on your Wi-Fi scan and find out. What's interesting as well, and that's what you're showing right now. I don't know if you're sharing your screen,
but I can share my screen. Go ahead.
Yeah, you have a packet capture where you were able to connect your Samsung phone to the network, and we can actually see the different frame exchange between the phone and the AP connect. And you'll see if you start to do this work, you'll see that it's a little bit different than WPA2 personal. In WPA2 personal, after the probing sequence, you're going to have authentication, a two-way authentication packet exchange between the client and the AP. And then you're going to have the attestation request sent by the client, the attestation response sent by the AP. And after that, you have the four-way handshake. And after the four-way handshake, the client is pretty much connected. It can start sending encrypted data over the Wi-Fi. With WPA3 personal and SAE, you will see that instead of having two-way packet exchange for the authentication, now you have four packets exchanged between the client device and the AP. And this is because that's part of the SAE protocol. And you have actually two steps in the SAE protocol. You have the commit part of it. So the two first packets will be the commit, and you can see it in Wireshark. If you look at the video, Roald is outlining right now. And then the second step of the authentication is the confirm. So you're going to have that confirm step, which is once again a two-way packet exchange between the client and the AP. So the authentication frame, it's still the same frame, right? But it's used for different purposes here with WPA3 personal, and that's what allows us to do SAE, and that's what allows us to have stronger security.
Yep. That's a pretty good highlight, which we do want to dive into this a little bit deeper in a future episode, again, like we mentioned in the beginning. But it is key to know about these frame exchanges, especially when CWP will update the security professional track, because that's going to be key to understanding WPA3 as it's more mainstream and implemented everywhere else. So WPA3 personal is the easiest one to understand, right? And so, I guess the next thing, like we showed that you needed management frame protection and all that. I want to see if I do have. I thought I had like the beacon frame too. It's nothing different from what we were talking about, but what I wanted to show was how you can see when a WPA3 personal is broadcasted, it shows that you need to have WPA3 supported with the AKM suite and also management frame protection enabled. And that's something, I guess I should go back to the controller, is when you're configuring this. So let me let me enable WPA2 real quick. So you can see down below, protected management frame section of the WLAN, you could enable that, disable it, or make it optional, right? When you enable WPA3 only, it already automatically just sets it to required, and you cannot change it because you must support protected management frames for WPA3. So that's just one thing I wanted to show. In the beacon, it will show that as well. And I guess Wi-Fi Explorer is the beacon view. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. And I was going to say that's really nice when you want to make sure that everyone will support the new standard in security. But you also exclude all of these kind of devices that don't support WPA3 and don't support MFP. So what do you do with all the legacy devices, I guess?
Yes.
Right? And that's when you have this transition mode that you can introduce where, instead of telling the client devices that only WPA3 is available as a security method to connect to the Wi-Fi, you can have both WPA3 and WPA2 enabled at the same time on the same SSID.
Yep. So here you go. I have WPA3 enabled, and all I did was enable WPA2 as well. And you will see that I do have this fast transition checkbox that is now, I can change it, which I wasn't able to do that with WPA3 only. You can, one thing with Cisco is because you're enabling WPA2 and you want to enable this transition mode, you will need to change the protected management frame dropdown from required to optional. So that way your devices that do not support it can join the SSID. They'll join to the WPA2 part of the SSID. And any devices that do support WPA3 and can support protected management frames will join to the WPA3 portion of the SSID. That is how it is specified in WPA3. Like if a device can support WPA3 and protection management frame, you must use that instead versus the WPA2. And so here, so you can tell that WPA2 is enabled. PMF is optional. I'll go back to Wi-Fi Explorer because here we're showing that there's a suite count of 1, and we have management frame protection as a requirement. So I want you to remember that, right? So I will enable or apply this configuration. So now hopefully that's fast enough. We will go here. I'll stop this and restart the scan in Wi-Fi Explorer. Hasn't picked up yet. So
while it changes, also one thing that's important to note here is because you're re-enabling WPA2 on the Wi-Fi, you're also reintroducing all the vulnerabilities of WPA2 on your network. So you have to be mindful of that. And if you want to have a fully secure WPA3 network, you might have to, create a new SSID.
Yeah.
that only supports WPA3, and maybe have a second SSID that has the transition mode, so you can support I guess the better security.
Not what we're calling now legacy device. Anything with WPA2 is a legacy device. So you could segment those devices on another network, right? So SSID with WPA2 only, put them on a segmented network, put all your newer devices with WPA3 on another network. All right, so now the access point was able to gather these, or it's now broadcasting the new settings, right? So we're looking at the beacon frame of my SSID, which I have called Secure Me, which we've now made it unsecure. You can tell, remember the auth key management suite count was 1. Now there's 2. So you can see the OUIs and the types. We have pre-shared key enabled. That's got the type number 2 there. That's your WPA2. And we still have our WPA3 here, which is type 8. Now, if we look at the RSN capabilities and look at the management frame protection capable, it is capable, but it is not required. So that allows your non-WPA3 devices to join to this same SSID and join at WPA2, and at the same time have the WPA3 devices join WPA3. So you can see here the security type in this column is both WPA2 and WPA3. So that's what a transition mode of the SSID looks like. And it's the same if it's WPA3 personal or WPA3 enterprise. The only difference there between those two is you're using .1x, right?
Exactly.
So not bad.
Okay. That's cool. So now what happens if you try to enable WPA3 enterprise? What do you see on the beacon frame?
Yeah, so let's go there. And you want to do WPA3 only?
Sure, let's try it out.
All right. So you can tell once I've disabled WPA2, the protected management frame drop-down box goes gray and changes to required. Mm-hmm. All right, so you can enable the higher security on WPA3 Enterprise. I don't know if that's allowed on this version of the controller, because remember there's a 192-bit security, although I don't see that. Maybe it's this auth key management. You can tell these 3 auth key AKMs that are available. So let's hit apply. That's going to take a few seconds there to do. So I'll go back to the video of us as we talk about WPA3 Enterprise only. That's strictly WPA3 Enterprise. What would you expect to see there?
So I think WPA3 Enterprise versus WPA2 Enterprise is not. It's not very. There's not a lot of differences in between the two. Right. The only thing that changed that they supported, like you said, the stronger encryption key of 192 bits. So I think that's as far as I know, that's the only difference between the two. Everything else is the same. So it's the same process. It works the same way. Same packet exchange, same radius authentication, and so on.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have a packet exchange here because I was too lazy to set up a Radius server before this episode.
What?
But here you go. Here's the SSID, the beacon. You can now see it's WPA3 802.1x. You can see the auth key management suite. There's 2 because going back to the controller, I had enabled the other suite down here under the security tab. I scrolled down. There's auth key management. There's a SHA-1 and a SHA-2. I enabled both. And you can see now there's both. There's just an 802.1x, which is SHA-1, and then type 5, which is SHA-256. So that's the second option. And then you could see that, again, protected management frames is capable and required at the same time, right? So that's one thing to look at with .1x. It looks very similar. It's just one's .1x, right? The one thing that I was really trying to play with, because I saw this discussion on Twitter, was someone was asking, is fast transition allowed? Is it even part of the WPA3? Now, they added this later in December of 2019 to the WPA3 specification. So you saw that when I did personal, I was unable to select fast transition. So you really have to understand the capabilities of your infrastructure and understand how it works, because if you were to select WPA2 and you go, oh, you can do fast transition now, you might assume that it's going to enable fast transition for both WPA2 and WPA3. But when I did this, I need to add a key because I changed it to .1x. So I put in my new pre-shared key, I apply. It's also telling me that, hey, any devices that do not support fast transition, they're not going to be able to join because I said fast transition enable. So Francois, would you assume that fast transition is enabled for both WPA2 and WPA3 at this point, looking at this configuration?
I would assume so.
All right, so I had to validate that, right? You got to verify that that's the case. So, if we go here to, all right, so we've got the beacon frame here. It now says WPA2, WPA3, pre-shared key. We have our RSN information element, but what I'm looking for is the mobility domain, right? So it's there. We've got the fast transition capability. It's over the air fast transition. So, hey, it's enabled. But if you go back to RSN information element, and I look at the RSN capabilities, or the auth key management suite, there's 3 auth key management suites now, right? Because we enabled WPA2, that's one. We enabled WPA3, that's the second one. And then we said fast transition. So now that's a 3rd auth key management suite. But if you look at the frame details, it says fast transition using PSK. So I'm curious, does that mean fast transition with WPA3? I don't think it is, right? So if you look at the table that we include in the show notes, there is a different management suite type for fast transition with SAE, and it's type number 9. And if we go back to, let me show my screen again. If we go back to this table here, this is type 4, which means that's only for WPA2. So in this version of the controller, it is only enabling fast transition for WPA2 and not for WPA3 personal. But if I go back here, let's disable WPA2 and go to enterprise mode for WPA3. I now have that box enabled for me again. I'm going to enable that. Hit apply. So we wait a few seconds for the access point to get that update. Hasn't happened yet.
And you should be getting fast transition for
enterprise.
802.1x. Yeah, which is the suite number 3.
Yeah. So what we're looking for is type 3, and man, it's taking a while. Did I save it?
I think maybe the reason why it's not there yet is because it's actually a new authentication key.
Because I don't think
because
I don't think I tested it. Oh, there it is. It says WPA3 there.
Yeah.
WPA3
you can see it in the information
.1x.
element.
All right, so if we go back to the information element, look at that. The auth key management suite type, fast transition over IEEE 802.1x type 3. So which type did you say, Francois, it was supposed to be?
3. So you're good.
Yeah. So we're doing it over SAE, enterprise mode.
No, not SAE. SAE would be personal. But you do it over WPA3 enterprise.
Yeah, enterprise, yeah. So it is doing it over WPA3 enterprise. It's the right format. So I don't know, something with the code with Cisco doesn't support WPA3 personal fast transition. So maybe there's a newer version of code. I'll look at it after this episode to see if that's there. But that's a good look at seeing what's supported and then verifying, validating that the vendor is implementing it the right way, right? As you expected, or maybe it's not the right expectation as we saw with the WPA3 personal. So it's been interesting playing around with that and looking at some of the frame transactions, understanding how WPA3 works between a client device and the access point, as well as understanding the auth key management selector suites that's available. So we have that, again, we have that table in the show notes. It goes 1 through 9. There's a lot now to memorize. We'll include some screenshots from Wireshark if you don't have the ability to get to or view these packet captures. I'll also include the packet captures as well if you want to take a look at it yourself. The only thing I don't have is a packet capture for the enterprise portion. And I don't know if we want to dive too far deep into the other enterprise portions, but I mean, really, it's enterprise 192-bit for a much stronger, higher security environment. I think they catered this towards like military and financial institutions. So they include other EAP cipher suites that you could use for 802.1x.
Yeah, well, thank you, Roel. That's a really nice overview. I really like the work you did in your lab. And you guys will be able to check everything in the show notes. If you get a chance to watch the video, I think it would be even better for this episode, so you'll see exactly what Roel was doing on his computer. And if you get a chance to look at the packet capture, it's really interesting to see, what's happening, especially for the WPA3 personal and SAE, and see how it's different from what we typically have with the WPA2 personal. So I think that was a very nice overview of WPA3, like a hands-on example. If you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to send us a tweet or leave a comment on the show notes, clearstand.net/229. And then maybe we'll do a follow-up episode on SAE to try to deep a little bit deeper into the crypto behind it.
Yeah, and let us know if you guys plan to use WPA3. Are you testing it in your environment? Is there a strategy for you guys to move over to WPA3 anytime soon? I don't know. Let us know. So give us a comment on the show notes, clearsend.net/229. Check out our new course, courses.clearsend.net. We want to know what you guys think about that course, and if it's going to help you guys. Looking for some feedback on that as well. But other than that, we'll see you guys on the next episode. Not sure what. I don't think we have anything planned on the next episode after this, but we'll see.
We'll see. Mystery.
Thank you guys. We'll see you on the next one.
See you. Bye-bye.